Welcome back to Is April O'Neil Annoying or Misunderstood Part 2. Last video we asked if April O'Neil is really a dumbass in distress who's more of a prize for the boys, or a misunderstood character that the fandom had wrongfully misjudged. We covered the good, the bad, and the stupid for the first 2 seasons, so let's wrap things up with Season 3 begins with the gang taking refuge in April's family farm after failing to save New York. We actually see April sparring with the turtles, even knocking Raph out, claiming how she's almost a full kunoichi. I would say the best part of April is watching her slow, natural development from a scared girl to an equal to the turtles. We did have to stomach through some cringe episodes with her, but for the most part she's okay. Also, even though the barn arc is infamously known as the worst arc in the show, there are a few important episodes that do center around April. Some good, some bad, and some weird. Let's start with the bad. And when I mean bad, I mean bad. It's not just the worst episode of 2012. It's regarded as one of the worst things that came out in turtle media, and that's saying a lot. I'm talking about A Foot Too Big. Yeah, I have no idea what the writers were thinking when making this episode. It's not fun to watch, it's filled with cringe, and it has absolutely no point to it whatsoever. Basically, Donnie gets a taste of his own medicine when Bigfoot falls in love with him and realizes how he must have made April feel. By the end of the episode, he does apologize to April and says,
I just wanted to let you know I won't be bothering you with music boxes anymore. I get it now. Donnie is to April as Bigfoot was to Donnie.
Okay, so even though this episode was hard to watch, and I mean hard to watch, I would have given this a small point if at the end of the episode they went through with Donnie moving on from April. That's a hard lesson to teach, especially to kids. Sometimes your crush won't like you back. Sometimes we have done things to make those crushes feel uncomfortable. But we can always take accountability for our actions, apologize, and move on. That's great! Except for one thing. April apparently does like him.
You're not just a mutant, Donnie. You're my mutant. Mwah.
What? The episode begins with April feeling uncomfortable with Donnie when she received the music box. In fact, the entire episode, the turtles are hammering in the message that April doesn't like how Donnie treats her, how she doesn't see him that way. And having Bigfoot treat Donnie that way is what's supposed to make him realize how creepy he was. But then the show just turns around and says,
You're not just a mutant, Donnie. You're my mutant. Mwah.
What the hell? So does this mean Donnie and April are a couple now? Nope! April just goes back to ignoring him.
Hey, check me out, April!
This is the reason why people don't like April. Why they think she's manipulative, playing with the guy's heartstrings, is an attention seeker, and why she's considered as such a cheese plate. Look, I know I said I was going to save talking about the love triangle in a future shipping video, but I have some things to say. Okay, so in season 1, April and Donnie's relationship was seemingly one-sided, with Donnie being the one simping for her. Now, April did have some moments with him that seemed cute, or seemed like she liked him back. But for the majority of the time, she was shown to be weirded out, uncomfortable, or even shrugs off his advances. But we also have moments when April gets mad at the idea of Donnie wanting to recruit Karai because, in her own words,
Is it hot in here? She's pretty.
Indicating that April is jealous that Donnie could be attracted to Karai. Then in season 2, when she meets Casey Jones, she's shown to be uncomfortable when he asks her out, but then later on in the episode, she says things like,
"So when's our next date?"
Don't get ahead of yourself there, Jones.
indicating that she's beginning to be attracted to him. In fact, I say in season 2, April is much more flirtatious to Casey than Donnie. But then she'll give kisses to Donnie right in front of Casey Jones at times. Some April defenders have pointed out that friends sometimes give each other pecks on the cheeks, which, yeah, can happen. But April is very much aware that Donnie sees her romantically and wants to be more than friends with her. I also don't see her giving cheek kisses to her other friends. It's just Donnie, one of the guys in her love triangles. Also, look how Donnie reacts when she does receive a kiss. You see how he's not doing a good job at hiding the fact that he thinks this is romantic? Wouldn't it have crossed to April or even someone else in the team that she's giving him mixed messages and it should have been addressed to her? And even if you still try to make the argument by saying, oh, she doesn't know because Donnie never confessed to her, or, well, she's not doing it intentionally, she's just closer friends to Donnie. There are moments when she is aware, like in this scene. Look at her. She knows what Donnie's doing, and she still goes through with it. That's not the face of someone who doesn't know or is uncomfortable. Speaking of which, although yes, Donnie and Casey Jones have done creepy things to April or made her uncomfortable, like stalking her, getting into her space, giving her unwanted hugs, or even goddamn touching her, April still hangs out with those two the most. And like I said before, she will flirt back if Casey begins flirting with her, especially if they're alone together.
So April, vigilanteing is cool and all, but how about a real date?
What do you call this?
So which is it? Is she uncomfortable around them? Or does she have feelings for both? Are we supposed to feel creeped out when the boys try flirting with her? Or is this an actual relationship we're supposed to root for? What is it? The big issue with this love triangle is that the show goes back and forth if this is supposed to be a cute but awkward love story between teenagers or an uncomfortable, downright creepy scenario of a girl and two boys advancing her, and it all comes down to April's writing. Although April has never downright said she's an attention seeker or she likes playing with the boys' heartstring, it still reads like that. We see her go back and forth between the two, but then bark at them to leave her alone even if previous episodes show she may have a thing for them.
Isn't that the point of a love triangle?
Yes, my annoying frenemy, love triangles do have the teetering effect. But there is an important key detail that TMNT 2012 is missing: April's point of view. An example of a better love triangle can be seen in the Hunger Games novels. As the reader, we see Katniss's point of view when she goes back and forth between Gale and Peeta. We as the reader get into her mentality with how her feelings towards the guys are shifting, and why she end up with Peeta, because the books explained, what I need is the dandelion in the spring, the bright yellow that means rebirth instead of destruction, the promise that life can go on, no matter how bad our losses, that it can be good, and only Peeta can give me that. In the movies, although we don't hear her inner monologue, Katniss will still have moments with the guys where her relationship with them starts to shift and gets to know them better. She went from viewing Peeta as her partner in the games to the one she couldn't survive without. She went from viewing Gale as her best friend to the guy who let his hate for the Capitol consume him so much that he ended up creating the weapon that killed Katniss's sister. Even bad love triangles, like whatever the hell was going on with Legend of Korra, did this. Even though Korra likes Mako, she gave Bolin a chance, but realized she didn't like him that way. She still was in love with Mako, who was dating Asami, but he soon realized he loved her at the end of season 1. You see how the show took its time to show us how the characters feel about each other? We don't get that with April. We as the audience know exactly how Donnie and Casey Jones feel, but we don't have an episode or even a moment where April gets to explain how she feels about them. I guess it would be hard since the only friends she has are Donnie's brothers, but even when she was friends with Irma, she didn't really get to talk about that. Irma teased her about liking Casey Jones, but we still don't get April's feelings on the matter. This is why so many people have their headcanons of her being an attention seeker, while others have headcanons that she's uncomfortable with the guys. The show doesn't give us a clear answer, so we end up making our own assumptions. This is one of the reasons why this episode is so bad. It leaves us more confused than giving us any closure.
I understand nothing.
You and me both, Dee.
Jesus, you done yet? We've just begun season 3. Is this gonna be a 3-parter?
Let's hope not. Lucky for us, the next episode is one of the best. So the rest of the barn arc, April has much better episodes focused on her. In fact, the next episode, Buried Secrets, has the return of what seems to be her mom, which turns out to be a monster. We get her family's backstory of April's grandfather finding the Krang, resulting in the Krang experimenting on the rest of the family, explaining her powers. Speaking of which, April's powers are still hit and miss. Like in some episodes, her powers are activated by her emotions. In others, she needs to train them. And then we have moments like in dreams, she can somehow connect to the guys in their sleep, even though she's never done that before. I've also noticed that even though April is becoming an equal to the turtles, she doesn't think of using her powers in combat. Like, look, she gets caught by a frog, but doesn't try using her telekinetic scream to get herself out. Or in this case, when she's being chased by the creep, maybe before running away, she could have tried screaming or moving him. But no, her powers aren't really used nor mentioned unless the plot wants to mention or use them. But what about April herself? How is she throughout this small arc? She's fine. I'd say she shines the best when she's not dealing with the love triangle, like the episode with her mom or the episode when she and Leo saves the gang from the Chimera. Here we see her backstory developed, get a better understanding of who she is, and we are reminded that she's a determined go-getter, like when she has to motivate Leo to save the gang after he feels like he failed as a leader. However, I've also realized another problem with her, and it's her personality. Like I said before, April is a determined go-getter that once she puts her mind to something, she will achieve it no matter the cost, even if it gets her into some trouble. But that's all she really is, not to mention how she's so inconsistent in some episodes. Now let's compare her to the turtles. Leo is the determined, mature leader who has a geeky side, but has his insecurities of being a leader. Donnie is the brains of the team, who's socially awkward but sassy, a simp, and has a small temper. Raph is the muscle of the team, who's battle-hungry, has his classic anger issues, but also has his sensitive side. Mikey is the baby brother who is the comic relief, is the most dim-witted, but the show also hammers in that he's smarter and stronger than the group gives him credit for. April seems so boring in comparison. Hell, even compared to other minor characters, she seems boring. I know I said before April is usually the heart of the team, but since the show wants to play on the love triangle more when it comes to her, then she doesn't really have a chance to be the heart of the group. Look, for example, Katara in Avatar. Although she does end up with Aang at the end, there are more episodes dedicated to her motivating others, tending to the team's wounds, whether physical or emotional, and even has leadership moments when Sokka and Aang can't step up to the plate. Although she is very motherly, she is still a determined fighter who sometimes gets into trouble, but she will have her quips. Not only does she fit her role as the heart of the group, there's also more to her. April is pretty one-note compared not just to her team, but to other characters as well. And it's funny because she shares the same voice actress as Katara. Maybe they should have gotten more inspiration from her. So by the end of the barn arc, April has both her worst and best moments here. It's great that we got to see her family's backstory and how she's connected to the Krang, but we also have to suffer her worst moment when she kissed Donnie. This does fuel the fire of her haters and presents her really badly. But what I can say is that we had one bad April episode out of the 8 episodes in the barn arc. Although her personality is lacking, she's still a caring person who helps motivate the group, and she's getting closer to being an equal. In fact, when April gets kidnapped in this arc, then everyone is kidnapped with her. She's no longer the only one who's getting targeted. If she's getting taken, then everyone's getting taken. Good work, April. So now that this arc is over, how is she for the Return to New York arc? Or how I like to call it, the real Season 3. The gang returns to New York where they track down Splinter thanks to April's help. They rescue him after he lost his mind and the Shredder kidnapped him, with April using her powers to get through to him like how she did in the In Dreams episode. Alright, nice work, April. Next, April helps the gang look for Karai as she once again proves she's a better fighter by holding her own against Bebop and Rocksteady. Then after failing to save Karai, they regroup and are determined to once again save New York. And April's dead again. Jesus, just put a leash on him for crying out loud. So, although it is annoying that April has to save her dad again, we don't have to wait the whole season like last time. In fact, she reunites with him 4 episodes later. So, what else does she do? Well, to be honest, nothing much. Although she did save Splinter, help track down Karai, and found out the humans were in Dimension X through her powers, she doesn't really do anything else after the mid-season. In fact, during the mid-season special, she stays with Splinter while the Turtles and the mighty Mutanimals go save the humans. She doesn't even put up a fight. She just stays back. I would have understood if this was Season 1 April, but Season 3 April is so much closer to being an equal to the Turtles. So why is she okay with staying back? Hell, even Season 1 April would have still wanted to find a way to help out. She's always one to rush in if it means saving her dad. Maybe she's just numb to it by this point. I don't blame you, April, we all are. After the mid-season special, April actually doesn't appear much. Even in the episodes when she's around, she's relegated to the background. On one hand, I am so glad we don't have to deal with the love triangle nonsense we got in Season 2, but it's like the show doesn't know what to do with her. She starts to appear again towards the end of the finale, but in episodes when she's around more, they have her trapped or kidnapped again, this time with the group. But even so, she still gets the short end of the stick. For example, in Deadly Poison, she's the first one poisoned by Karai, so she's not in the episode for long. Then in the Foretold Trap, the Turtles get to be in their own Saw-like trap, while April is just chained. Boring. She becomes relevant again in the Season 3 finale, when she actually does a decent job of holding off the Triceratons. Then she helps convince the Shredder to join the fight, freaks out when Splinter dies, and then gets saved by the Fugitoid with the gang. So April has her weird ups and downs this season. The worst episode she's in was in A Foot Too Big, but I say that's the only worst thing about her in this season. The love triangle drama dialed down a bit too. It's still there, but it's not in your face like how it was in Season 2. So that's also an improvement. But outside the barn arc, April is barely in this season. It feels like the writers didn't know what to do with her if there wasn't a love triangle involved. We got an episode with Casey Jones fighting the Purple Dragons, so why doesn't April get at least an episode dedicated to her? She feels like an afterthought at this point. The best thing about her is that she now feels like an equal to the Turtles more than ever, but her personality is still lacking. She's very inconsistent in both her telekinetic powers and her feelings in the love triangle. Is this really the great character that April defenders are fighting for? But we have 2 more seasons to go. Let's see if she does become great with the next arc. So, this is starting to get hard to write. Why? Because April's character just stays the same through this arc. I keep saying the same thing over and over. She's getting better as a fighter. Her powers are still inconsistent. And the worst part of her is when she's involved in the love triangle, which is still dialed down. Now, this isn't an April's issue. It's just an issue that everyone has. TMNT 2012, although does have an overarching story, it's more of an episodic show like Teen Titans. So because of this, characters seem to keep relearning lessons, or they will repeat the same arc they had in previous seasons or even episodes. Which is why it's getting hard for me to say anything good or bad about April that I haven't said before, because the show isn't giving me anything new.
Ahem.
With one exception. April gets a crystal shard from an alien planet they helped save that is also supposed to help her control her powers. 4 seasons and 5 episodes later, we finally have April train her psychic powers. Very late into the game, but it's better than nothing. They also hint that April is going to be corrupted by the power of the crystal, which does happen later on in this season. Okay, April's powers are finally going to be realized. That's good. But she doesn't do much after that. She's still more like a background character. She does help out, and she's no longer the target of kidnappings. But other than her powers, she's just sort of there. She's not horrible, but she's not great either. She's just there. Yeah, I don't have anything quippy to say. Let's just head to the next arc. After saving the Earth from the Triceratons, April finally becomes a full-fledged Kuno Witch and celebrates with the guys. However, she does get beaten by Shinigami, Kurai's friend, and goes after her. There's hints that April's crystal is starting to affect her as she becomes more vengeful in her rematch with Shinigami, but she still loses at the end, making her insecure if she's really ready to become a Kuno Witch. Luckily for her, Kurai is on her dumbass in distress arc, so the gang comes to their rescue when...
Call me what you will. I am the most interesting fish in the world.
Step away from the teenage girl! I repeat, step away from the teenage girl! Don't worry, child. He won't hurt you anymore. What the fuck was that about? Nickelodeon! No! Just no! The episode ends with April defeating Tiger Claw and helping save Shinigami and Kurai, earning their respect. So I'd say April is becoming much better since she's now an official Kuno Witch, and now she has an arc of being corrupted by the crystal. So a lot of people have been giving April a lot of hate in this arc, but did they forget she's being corrupted? Yes, she does act crazy and possessive when the guys try to take away the crystal from her, but that's the point. The show is building up to her being completely corrupted by the crystal, so they needed to have her act out and be insane to the guys. Speaking of which, when April does get completely taken over by the crystal, it's a good episode. She goes back and forth of who's in control, her or the alien within. She basically becomes Jean Grey, and I mean that in a good way. Now, some people have gotten angry that she killed Donnie with no remorse, but once again, she's possessed! This is clearly the alien. They're the one who killed Donnie, and when April regains control, she is heartbroken by this. She's full of regret, and when the guys remind her of Donnie, she manages to break control and destroy the crystal. I would say the only bad thing about this episode is how she brings back Donnie. Like I said, she killed Donnie, but the show explains that he was molecularly scattered, and April just somehow manages to put him back together. A skill she never knew how to do before. See how her powers are kind of plot convenient? It's getting better, but they're still really based on what the plot demands. Like, how convenient that April somehow figured out that Donnie wasn't really killed, and she somehow knows how to put him together. The end of the episode reveals that although April isn't as powerful as she was before with the crystal, she still has a better understanding of her powers. That's great! It would have been so easy if the show still allowed her to be OP and say, I have finally mastered my powers. But they decided, no, let's give her some weaknesses for her to overcome. Good job, 2012! So now that April has some form of control of her powers and now is of Kunoichi, what is she going to do? Oh, wait, what? So yeah, the show is kind of over. I know we have season 5, we'll get to that soon, but this is technically the real end of the show. Between the power within her and the season finale, she helps out, but all that hype around her and her powers are kind of put to the side. In fact, thinking about it, there's a few things that were dropped now that the season has ended and never appeared in season 5. What really happened to April's mom? Where is April's mom? In fact, what happened to the rest of April's family who was experimented on by the Krang? If Kirby and Miss O'Neill had to flee to New York because they were afraid the Krang would get April, why didn't Kirby say anything to April? In fact, why didn't he try to prepare his daughter that aliens might be after her? Is April's powers based on her emotions, or is it something that she has to focus to control? Why can't she sense things all of a sudden in certain episodes, but enemies can sneak up on her? And finally, the one the show really wanted us to think about, who does April choose?
Then what the hell was the point?
I'll save that rant for the end, but going back to the finale. When the gang goes to defeat the Shredder, April and Casey Jones fall off the building, being separated from the Turtles. Even though earlier in this episode, April was shown levitating the group, so why can't she just do the same thing with her and Casey? Couldn't they have at least knocked her out? Anyways, after Leo defeats the Shredder, the show ends with the gang at peace looking out into the city, hinting at new adventures in season 5. So this season was a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to April. She isn't really that important in the space arc, but she shines when she returns to New York. She finally achieves her goal of becoming a Kunoichi and controls her powers. But can I say I was wrong? In some parts, yes, but other parts, no. Let's head to that.
What about season 5?
Season 5? It's kind of like Karai. She shows up, helps out, and that's pretty much it. Season 5 is more of a filler season. Nothing really that important happens, so without further ado, let's get back to... Alright, so in my top 5 dumbasses in distress video, I claimed April was a manipulative she-demon who would exploit the boy's love for her to get what she wants, especially to Donnie. Well, with that, dear viewers, I must admit, I was dead wrong. April isn't exploiting Donnie nor Casey to get what she wants. In fact, April was only a dumbass in distress in one episode. Season 1 and 2, she did get captured the most. However, she was in training. She was learning, but she still had moments to prove herself, whether fighting or outsmarting the enemy. Then in season 3 and 4, she became more of an equal to the Turtles. If she gets kidnapped, then everyone gets kidnapped with her. The best part of April's arc was her slow progression as a Kunoichi, and that is something that should be praised. So I admit, my dear viewers, I was wrong. April does not deserve the title of Dumbass in Distress. She had one true Dumbass in Distress moment, but for the majority of the time, she proved herself of earning the title of Kunoichi. That being said, there are still a lot of issues with the character. Although she isn't the manipulative chi-demon I thought she was, her personality is very basic compared to the rest of the cast. Even some minor characters have more interesting personalities than her. The best part of April is her slow progression as a Kunoichi, yes, but the character itself is so boring compared to the rest of her friends. She's the girl of the group. That's it. The most interesting parts of her is the mystery behind her powers, which aren't fully answered. She can control her powers better, yes, but once again, they still feel more like a plot device, even a MacGuffin at times. But the worst part of April is that she falls into the cheese plate trope. In fact, she's more closer to a character and their love interest category. She's not completely there as she does have relevance to the story, but the show really wants to focus on who she'll end up with, especially in the first 2 seasons. In fact, when the show does dial down the love triangle drama, April isn't used much as we see in the second half of season 3 and the first part of season 4. Speaking of which, this entire love triangle shit was completely pointless, because guess what? She doesn't end up with anyone. Yeah, all the drama, all that uncomfortable moments between the guys, all that focus on who April is going to choose amounts to nothing. Even as a shipper, I was pissed as fuck. Not because my ship didn't happen. No, it's because they completely wasted my time. If you're going to have a love story, that's fine, but actually commit to it. And if you are going to put so much focus on who the girl is going to end up with, then you should commit to her choosing. Otherwise, why even have it in the first place? Adding to that, April's involvement in the show is so inconsistent that it's problematic. The boys do have their creepy moments with April. I'll get to them eventually. But April still fuels the fire. And look, I'm not victim blaming her. I know someone is going to accuse me of that. This is more of the writer's faults than hers. Because April goes back and forth on flirting with the guys, but then she's also uncomfortable or annoyed with them in other episodes, so it's not clear if she's toying with the boys or if she is legitimately uncomfortable with them. But seeing as how she hangs out with Casey Jones and Donnie the most, a lot of fans have made the assumption that she either doesn't mind, or even worse, likes the attention the guys give her, which is horrible. This is not a good message to teach to young kids. And what's worse is that the show doesn't even know if the guy's treatment of April is creepy or just socially awkward. So there's no real repercussions the guys get. If you wanted this to be a romance that's a bit awkward, then go for it. But leave the creepy parts out of it. And if for whatever reason you want to keep the creepy parts, then have it be addressed and dealt with. Don't pretend like the guys learned their lessons just for April to say, oh, actually it's fine. I sort of like you too. No, if you're going to bring it up, then deal with it properly.
Jesus, it's a cartoon! It's not real! It's just fiction meant for kids! It's not meant to be taken that seriously!
You're right. This is a cartoon. A cartoon watched by impressionable young kids who sometimes like to mimic cartoons. Kids who look up to fictional heroes and try to copy their personalities. Kids who will one day grow up and try to date too. So, is it really right to teach kids that this type of behavior is okay? That, oh, it's not you, it's her. It's okay if you stalk her, even if she tells you to stop. She'll thank you later. It's fine if you get in her space, even if she's uncomfortable with it. She'll learn to like you later. After all, boys will be... I don't even want to finish that sentence. That's just ridiculous. The writers may not have intended this, but the damage has been done. We needed to have April consistent in the love triangle, and we needed to hear her point of view, too. Because what we got is a problematic mess that makes no one look good at the end of the day. I may be wrong that April isn't a dumbass in distress, but this character still brings other issues to the plate. So is April a great character? No, far from it. Honestly, she's decent at most, and that's just me being nice. She's not written well, isn't interesting compared to her peers, and her involvement in the love triangle is very problematic. But I do see where her defenders are coming from. She has a great natural progression of developing into a kunoichi, and she has been misjudged unfairly in the fandom. She just needed better writing. That's the biggest issue with her. She just needed someone to give her more time to be her own person outside of the romance, and have her be more interesting outside of a go-getter to match her peers. Outside the love drama, she's okay. She's still not one of my favorite characters, but she's okay. Whew. Now that that's out of the way, I guess I'll work on my next discussion video. And hit that subscribe button. My goal is to get to 5K subs before I grow old and die. So help me achieve my goal. And feel free to leave me other suggestions of 2012 TMNT I can cover next. Roll credits!
Guess what? I just started making my own comic series. My first short just came out. Please go check it out. If I could summarize what Generation Defenders is about in 2 words, it would be stranger danger. I'm really excited about rebooting my original comics, and I hope you guys can go check it out.
But what about Goten Black?
It's still coming. I just want to do new things too. Don't worry. In fact, you can read the available pages on my Patreon right now, get behind-the-scenes commentary, and get updates on my new pages of Goten Black every Thursday. It's just $3 a month, and it will help us get Goten Black out quicker. We also have super things if you want to make a one-time donation, which will be shout out in our community tabs and in our next videos. Speaking of which, shout out to all my Patreon members. You guys are incredible. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to help support the Goten Black project. I can't believe we actually almost got to 2.5K subs. That's double from last year. Subscribe to help us get to 5K. Bye, guys.